By the end of this video, you'll be able to turn your spaceship from an empty looking boring spaceship like this to one that actually has armies of stormtroopers like this. Hundreds of stormtroopers running in real time. Look at our FPS. Look at this. Yeah, you're going to be able to do this. So let's get started.
What is up, beautiful people? We are here at chapter 14 now. Yes, that's the new soundboard that we got. We are going to talk about how we can clone characters.
Okay, sorry guys. We just started testing the soundboard of our Rodecaster Pro.
Yes.
Not sponsored, but it's just really cool because we got these default sounds, so had to try them.
So, in this chapter, we are going to teach you guys how to clone characters, create our army of Stormtrooper, and also we are going to talk about a feature in Unreal Engine which is called Nanite. We are going to overuse the soundboard, definitely. Let's go.
So today's going to be really exciting because, first of all, if you look closely at our scene, the one last thing remaining within our blockout is these little, well, not little, these big giant rectangles on the floor, because they are supposed to be replaced with the Stormtrooper armies. And that is precisely what we're doing today. So Farhad, are we ready?
Let's go.
Okay, so if you guys remember in the last episode, when we had our little band of stormtroopers here, these guys, if we click on them and look to the right, they have this skeleton icon beside them because they are the skeletal mesh of the stormtroopers, and they come in with the animation. So if you were to use the initial position, we'll notice that these guys actually have animation. And what we want to go ahead and do, okay, probably the first thing that comes to your mind is if you want to create an army of stormtroopers, we can pull these guys back here, right? And we can go ahead and hold Alt, duplicate, hold Alt, duplicate.
Isn't that going to kill our GPU?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If you were to choose between stormtroopers without an armature and stormtroopers with an armature, the one with the armature is going to be heavier. And since these armies are going to be at the back and not going to be the focus of our camera shots, because we're going to have some actual stormtroopers with animation walking here, these guys are going to be, probably blurred out in the background. So for that very reason, you don't need all of them to have armature. So why do you want to go ahead and create hundreds of stormtroopers with armatures that are going to be super heavy in your scene, where you can go ahead and use them as static meshes? And static mesh, if you still do not know, is basically like something like this rectangle. It's basically a mesh without any armature. It's static. You can animate it, but it doesn't deform. Right? It doesn't have an armature attached to it. So the goal right now is to go ahead and create static meshes from our stormtroopers.
Yes.
Right? So the one thing I'd like to note as well is that the reason why we brought in multiple rifle idle animations in the beginning is because if you were to go ahead and duplicate the same animation 100 times, your army will look super repetitive. And we do not want that. Do we want that?
Nope.
We don't want that, right? We want to have some randomness within the army to make it look more realistic. Just like how in real life, people are not going to be standing exactly the same way. So the problem right now is if you were to go ahead and even try to duplicate these guys with the method that we'd like to use, which is the pattern method.
The one that we use for the lighting, right?
Absolutely. So let's say, as Farhad mentioned, we want to go ahead and duplicate these guys using the pattern method. If you go to the modeling tab and go to Xform, the pattern option is
disabled.
Why do you think that is?
Because you can't pattern them?
Yeah, because they're skeletal meshes.
Yes.
You can only pattern static meshes.
Can we turn a skeletal mesh into a static mesh?
Yes, you can. And it's actually fairly easy.
Show me.
So I'm going to show you how to do it. So right now we're going to delete these guys. What our goal is to go ahead to our stormtroopers, and we have all these animation sequences. We have this guy, we have this guy, we have this guy, and this guy. We just open one of them, any of them, because technically, if we maximize this window, we have access to every single one of these animations right here. Now, Farhad, the sweet thing is, at the top here, I'm just going to stop the playback by just clicking somewhere on the timeline down here. And let's say I am happy. Let me know, Farah, when you're happy with our pose.
Happy.
Happy? This
Happy.
one? Okay, cool.
Happy.
If you're happy with the pose that you have, all you have to do, thank you. All you have to do is look at the top here and it says make static mesh.
Very intuitive.
Very intuitive. All you have to do is now click this and then choose a location. I'm going to create a new folder, a whole new folder, call it ST Storm
Troopers. I love this soundboard.
Yeah.
You should have had this on
I
chapter
know,
1.
right? It's so late in the tutorial series, but it's okay.
This is the price for you guys who made it all the way here. Those who are stopped at chapter 1, 2, and 3, they're not going to get the soundboard.
No, they don't. So I'm going to call this ST for static mesh Stormtrooper, right? And then we're going to call this ST1. Okay, that's going to be our first static mesh, right? And what's really cool is that if you go ahead and open ST1, right, it's just going to open the static mesh that we just created. And I'm just going to quickly close this, open my content drawer, check ST Stormtrooper, and look at this. I now have literally a static mesh of this Stormtrooper. So if I were to go to Sketchfab right now and download a Stormtrooper without any animation, this would be the static mesh that I bring in, right? And now I just created it from the animations that I brought, which is really neat because I have hundreds of permutations, right? So at this frame, exactly 148 is one static mesh. I want another randomness, right? So I'm just going to pull this forward, and that's already another
Click
static
that
mesh.
button. Let's go.
Check it out. Make static mesh, ST Stormtrooper,
ST2.
ST2.
So we made 2 static mesh from a single animation sequence.
Yes, absolutely. So now I can go ahead and use this, but I'm just going to go ahead to another animation sequence. So it's slightly different because it's holding the rifle differently. And I'm going to go to maybe, Farah, tell me when you're happy.
Yeah, when the rifle is looking down. Yes.
So here, okay.
Yes.
Frame 82, make static mesh, go to ST
ST3.
Stormtrooper, and then ST3.
Let's do another one with the last animation that we have.
Okay, we're going to go to rifle 14. And Farah, let me know when you're happy.
Yeah, I think this is good. The guy's barely moving, so.
Okay. So ST Stormtrooper, ST4.
And it's as simple as last time. Just drag and drop all the STs into the scene and we're done.
That's it. I'm going to go ahead and click save, and then I'll close this guy right here. And right now, if I go to my ST Stormtrooper, I have 4 of them, which I can shift select.
Can I bring all 4 together?
Absolutely. I'm just going to bring them here, and then check this out. So I'm going to go to ST1, and then pull this guy using the X-axis slider. Go to ST2, pull this guy a little bit to the right, and then ST3 here. And just like that,
they
we
all
now
look
have
different. We have 4 different permutations.
Yes.
Amazing.
And this now, right now, it can be patterned in the modeling tab. If I shift select all of them, go to Xform, just like our lights, I can go to pattern. It's now enabled.
Wait. What are you doing?
Why
They
not?
don't have rifles in their hand.
Okay, you're right. You're a genius. Okay, that was good. That was good. Okay, you didn't burn me. Why did you even do the ba-dum-ts?
Because you didn't bring the rifle.
Okay, you're right. Well, now you see the pattern works.
Yes.
The pattern works,
But
right?
before doing the pattern, we need to bring the rifle.
So for our rifle, let's head over to Sketchfab once again. We have already found the one we want to use, but all you have to do is just search for Star Wars Blaster, and you can see there are loads of options for you to choose from. We are going to be using this Star Wars Blaster 11 right here by Tolos. So thank you, Tolos.
I'm going to put the link in the description so you guys can take it.
Yes. So once you download the GLB file, right, we just want the GLB. All we're going to do is go ahead to the content drawer, create a new folder, call it Blaster. Can't type properly. And then we're going to drag and drop the GLB file. Remember to go ahead and check combine static meshes so you don't get multiple different parts to your gun, and then hit import. And just like that, we have our blaster in our scene. All I have to do is just drag it and drop it. Wow, that's huge. That's huge.
That's what she
But it's
said.
okay. It's good. It's fun. Okay, so we got the blaster. Now, Farhad, I can go ahead and try to bring this in and try to line it up with their hands. But the problem is right now the blaster and the guy, the characters, are disconnected. There's a way you can sort of connect these two together. Now, we're not merging actors at this point. I just want to make sure they're part of the same item in the outliner. I don't want to have to deal with 2 right now when I'm making my patterns. And in order to do that, one thing you can do is you go ahead to your character, and this works with any static mesh or any object that is in your viewport, by the way. Because so far, when you go to the details panel, we've taken a look at here, the transform, the mesh itself, the materials. We've never really explored what happens in the middle section here. So if you click any static mesh, for instance, you'll see the name, and you'll see that it has a static mesh component. That component holds the mesh, right? That is the mesh,
entire mesh.
The entire mesh. Now, you can go ahead and use the add function to add anything to that specific mesh, and it will follow the mesh itself when you move it. So it becomes part of the mesh. Not really part as in it's going to gel with it, but it's going to be
attached to it.
Like a group, if you will. So we're going to go ahead and hit add and see all of these options. You can even add audio to your character. You can add particles. You can add lights. Like I'm going to try this point light and see what happens. So I added a light. So let's say if this was a lamp, you just want to follow a light with a lamp. This is how you do it. So you have your static mesh. Now, if I move my static mesh, the light follows it. Really neat, right? Really, really neat. So I can go ahead and delete the point light by clicking this. What we want to do is go ahead and add a static mesh. Now, Farah, do you see what it says after static mesh?
Blaster.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's selected in your content drawer.
Absolutely. So if I don't select this and I go to add, it just says static mesh. Then I have to manually find it myself. Literally like this, and then go and select it here. But I don't want to do that. Why do I want to do that? I'll just select my blaster, go to add, static mesh, boom, boom. Just like that, it's there. So now it's part of my mesh. And if I go ahead and move, if I hit ST3, move it, I can move everything together. If I go to Star Wars Blaster, which is this guy only, and it's highlighted, I can just move this. So now the goal is to go ahead and manually line this up with our hand, which is going to take a little bit of time, but not too long. So one thing I'd like to note is now you can see that rotating is going to be difficult. I want to rotate it on its own axis, its local axis. So I'm going to use this gizmo here to rotate. Beautiful. And Farhad.
Can you make it smaller?
Yes. I'm going to make it smaller for sure. While I'm doing this and while I'm lining it up, who do you think is the sponsor of this episode?
Polycam. Thank you, Polycam, for sponsoring this video so we can give you this tutorial series for free on our YouTube channel. Polycam is a 3D scanning app.
You know what's the crazy thing? So
we could have 3D scan a blaster and bring it here.
Absolutely. If you have a Star Wars toy in your house, you can absolutely go ahead, take out your phone, download Polycam.
Use the link in the description.
In like a few minutes. Yeah, we got a link in the description with a sweet promo for you guys as well, actually. And you can go ahead and download Polycam. You can then go ahead and use your phone's camera to snap just a few photos of your model, whatever it is, if it's a figurine, if it's a blaster, if it's a lightsaber. And then within a matter of minutes, you'll have that 3D object that you can then bring into your scenes, and it will look even more photoreal than anything we've got here, because all of these were created in 3D. They're lacking some real life texture, but your one probably has real life texture. So if you do decide to do it, we would love to see the results. So share it with us. Okay, so I've finished one, Farhad, as you can see. This is a rough one. It's not placed perfectly in his hand, but it's pretty good, from someone who's looking from this angle. And I'm using C, if you can notice, right click and C to zoom in. You see, it looks perfect.
Yeah,
it looks really good.
Great.
So
how do we take it to the other ones?
So here's how you can take it. You can either manually do exactly what I just did multiple times, or you can go ahead to this guy and says, okay, I want to select my blaster, go to add, static mesh, Star Wars blaster. Okay, cool. But what I can do is, here's a neat trick. If I go to this guy, make sure you select the blaster. If you go to the location, rotation, and scale, this is now in reference in local axis to the Stormtrooper. Absolutely. It's not to the world origin. So if I were to go ahead and right click, copy this location, right? This is, and then go back here, go to my Star Wars blaster, and right click, so click here, right click and paste. It's not going to go to the location of the previous blaster. It's going to go to the location in reference to the object. So check this out, paste, right? And then I go back here, go to the blaster, right click rotation, copy, go to this guy, go to the blaster, go to the rotation, right click and paste. It's almost there. Go to this guy, go to the blaster, right click on the scale, go back to this guy, go to the blaster, right click on the scale, paste. Now, all I have to do is just make a few more manual rotations and it will be perfect. So you can go ahead and quickly do that for the other two characters. We're going to speed forward this section. And there you have it. This is now done. You should also have your Stormtroopers, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 3, depending on your preference, with their blasters in their hands. And now if you were to go ahead and select them and move them, the blasters should be moving with them as well. So if you're doing exactly what we're doing up until this point, it's time to now go ahead and create our pattern. Are we allowed to do it now?
Let's go.
Did I miss anything out?
Nope, nothing yet.
Okay, all right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly, just before I lose sight of all of these things, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, call this SD Stormtroopers. If you guys remember from our lights, these guys will actually stay. When we create patterns, it will just create new ones. So that's why I'm putting them in a different folder. And then each of these blocks of the army are going to be in a different folder as well, so that we're organized. So I'm going to pull these guys back just to the edge of my first block. I'm going to go to my pattern, and Farhad, for the pattern, we had multiple different ways we could create our pattern, right?
Let's do grid.
So we can go with line. We can go with circle, which is also cool. This is also really dope, by the way, right? This is also super cool. Or we're going to go with grids, right? Because this makes the most amount of sense for us.
That's too many.
It's too many right here. I'm just going to quickly enable our FPS just so we know if we're dropping. So right now we're at 60 and it's going to 20, but it's pretty much at 60 most of the time. And we're going to teach you guys a really important method that is going to help you save your FPS in a moment. But also, one more thing that we already told you guys about, if by any chance your computer is lagging right now, make sure you change your scalability settings to something lower than cinematic. We're sticking to cinematic because we want it to look great. Okay, so Farhad, definitely too many, right?
Yeah,
so bring down the count on
to
X.
5, I think.
Yeah, because it's a grid, right? So there's X and Y. So let's do maybe 5 and 5 and see what it's like. 5 and 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Amazing. Actually, there's
no. There's too much space in between them. I don't like this, actually. I'm just going to pull this back so we see how it is. I mean, the size is perfect, but we want more. Let's do 6, maybe? Oh, no.
6 on
we
the
need to
other
do
axis.
Yeah, so we need to do 5 here. And on the Y-axis, we're going to do 8.
Yes.
Oh, nice. But what do you think about the spacing? I think there's too much spacing. What about 9? This is better. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. 9. And what do you think about the first one actually having a little bit of a different shape? Because I do want these to be in a square shape, but I want this one to be maybe something like that. Like
3?
Yeah. You know how sometimes they're in different formations?
Okay.
So I kind of like the first block to be 3. I think this is pretty good. Okay. What do you think about this now?
How we can make them slightly different from each other? Is there any way to do that so they are not look exactly the same?
Okay, so
even the 4 that we made.
That's a very good question. So the reason we made the 4 in the first place is so that these guys all have different poses. But if you think about it, all of these are now a clone of the first 4, and then these guys are also a clone of the first 4. And so technically you would have some level of repetitiveness. And there's this really cool option, Farhad, here called jitter, which basically does what it says. It jitters, so it gives some different offsets to whichever value you're going for. So either your rotation, your translation, which is the location, or your scale. So technically, we can try to make these guys either slightly smaller or slightly bigger.
Slightly taller or slightly wider.
Absolutely. So they can be like fatter like fat stormtroopers. So let's enable jitter for scale, right? And then we're given 3 values, but technically we can only change, they're locked together. So if we were to bump this up to 1, let's see what happens. Just so you get an idea of what jitter does, right? This is the weirdest.
Short, tall, fat.
Yeah. But you see? We see what it does, right?
We should go with 0, 0, 0, maybe
9. 9 is a number. So we tested this. If you look closely, let's see what happens. Do you see the height differences now?
Yes, and they are left and right a little bit, which is great actually for cinematic.
You can actually do that with the translation as well. So
No, but then that would be standing in different positions.
No. It's not really standing. So if I were to change this to 5 and then copy this, it's like it's still fine, but it's maybe just small differences, right? So now the army is slightly less repetitive, but it's still uniform because you want your army to be uniform, or else it's not a good looking army, but it's still not exactly the same, which is perfect. So
can you remove the panel so we can see all of them on the floor?
Yes. Hide this. So hide. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, we are getting there.
This is looking good. Okay, let's hit accept so that we know we're done. Okay, hit accept. Boom. Just like that, we now have created all these patterns. So they're not exactly all the same. So if you look at the patterns now, it's separated, right? It's separated. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and put these patterns into a new folder called, I like to call it front army, right? So front army. No, I'll put all of the front armies together, and then the middle army and then the back army. That's just stupid naming, but we're going to remember it. So we want to go ahead and now duplicate all of this and just mirror it for the left side. But before we go ahead and do
what if my PC is crashing by creating this many soldiers? Stormtroopers.
That's actually a very good question.
How can I fix it? And I'm already changed scalability to medium.
That's a very good question. So if you've done that and your FPS is still running low, there's one function in Unreal Engine 5 which is called
Nanite.
And that is a godsend. Alongside Lumen, which was the lighting technology, right, that we talked about, which is basically the reason why we have real-time lighting and shadows that look really good. There's another thing about Unreal Engine 5 which people love, and it's called Nanite. Nanite basically says, okay, you are now allowed to have millions of polygons, these faces that we saw in the edit mode when we were making our spaceship. We can have millions of them without the computer saying, ouch. So how does it do it? Well, it's quite simple. Let's take a look at our Stormtroopers right now. Well, it's simple in theory, but it's complex in calculation. I'm sure it's not simple for the Epic Games developers. Yeah. So Farhad, if we go to our wireframe mode, we can actually see how dense our meshes are. So I'm just going to go to wireframe. And then we can see, if you go out, this is our spaceship. Remember, our spaceship looked exactly like this when we were looking at the edit mode. And if you go closer to our Stormtroopers, you can see how dense the mesh is, right? And we're creating hundreds of these. If you come from other 3D software, just duplicating all these guys is going to break your computer. So here, if you go back to lit mode, and then just see down here, there's something called Nanite visualization. And if we just go to overview, it's going to also be kind of laggy because it's trying to bring all of these at the same time. We're just going to go to triangles. And if you go to triangles, nothing changes. This is supposed to become black and you're supposed to see only your Nanite meshes. But because we have none, nothing happens. So how do we turn meshes into Nanite, and what does Nanite actually do? What Nanite does is it's going to say, okay, if this is my mesh, if my camera is here, I want to see it in full. I want to see it with all of the polygons that it has. But then if my camera is all the way here, do I really need my Stormtrooper to have all of those polygons?
No.
Right? So I'm going to go ahead and create multiple levels of detail, right? From really high level of detail to really low level of detail. And then as the camera moves further away,
I reduce it.
I reduce the polygon count.
Smart.
So you can basically have millions of polygons, but then when you're far away, they're not millions of polygons anymore. And so your computer can handle gigantic worlds and still be able to run.
Very impressive, Epic Games.
And they did it because they have games, right? In video games, you have massive worlds and you need to have a refresh rate of minimum of 60 FPS. So 60 frames per second needs to be rendered for you to enjoy your game. And that's why they created Lumen and Nanite. So now, Farhad, what do we do?
Right click.
Okay. So
right click on the static mesh, change it to Nanite.
Yes. So instead of right clicking here, because there's so many of them, we just go to the source, right? Find the source. We're going to go to the ST Stormtrooper. You can only, for now, there's only a couple of things you can turn to Nanite. Static meshes are one of them. So we're going to go to static mesh, shift click all of them, right click, and then Nanite.
Enable Nanite.
So you can either check this or check this. Okay, so we're going to enable Nanite. So once we do that, it's going to recalculate things, and then your mesh is going to start looking ugly. And you'll understand why. So we're going to explain to you how you can fix it as well. So right now, before we go ahead and fix that, let's go to our lit, go to our Nanite visualization, and go to triangles. And let's take a look at what has happened. Do you see this?
They're all nanite.
So they're all nanite. They look like these.
But the blaster is not nanite. Can we turn the blaster into nanite too?
Absolutely, we can. And if your FPS is dropping low right now, don't worry. It's just a nanite visualization method that drops your FPS. But look at what happens to triangles. As I move further away, do you see them changing? Look closely. Do you see them? Do you see it? It's changing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So as I go further away, right now the triangles are dropping in count, which is exactly what Nanite does. And our goal is to go ahead and turn as many of our static meshes into Nanite to make our scene as optimized as possible. And you should also see, once you have many of these Stormtroopers, right, when we create the entire army, you can go ahead and enable and disable Nanite if your computer can handle it, and you will be able to see the FPS difference. So the next thing we have to ask ourselves is, first, let's go ahead and create Nanite for our Stormtroopers, blasters, and then try to fix those ugly shadows that we have and explain to you why exactly they're happening. So let's go to our blaster right here, right click, Nanite, enable Nanite. And it's going to load the asset once more, and we have it solved. So the question is now, why do we have the ugly shadows? Well, let's find out. We're going to go to our settings. We're going to go to project settings. And then we're going to go to our rendering. You don't have to do this. I'm just trying to show you something. And then we go all the way down to a setting that we enabled earlier on, which was ray trace shadows. We're going to turn it off and then see it's gone. So ray trace shadows basically is literally throwing out rays and then trying to see how the light reflects, bounces, and creates realistic shadows. And that's what we want to turn on because we want those realistic shadows. But the problem is,
it's destroying our texture.
Destroying our texture. It's creating ugly shadows. Why? Well, let's go to one of our static meshes right here. For example, let's open this guy. The problem is, if we go to the top left view here and look at an option called Nanite Fallback, look at what happens to our mesh. Do you see?
Ew.
Do you see how low poly our mesh has become? Do you see the helmet? I'm going to turn that off. Pay close attention to it. Okay. The ugly shadows are there, but our mesh is fixed. This is the original mesh. Go back again, Nanite Fallback, right? This is basically that low-level detail.
That dropping shadow on the main one, and that's why it's broken.
Absolutely. So when Nanite is creating that low-level detail, not only is it doing that when it comes to the viewing of the mesh itself, but also how light reacts to that. Because if the light has to react to the original mesh, it's going to be more expensive. So it's now reacting to the fallback mesh, which is the low-level detail. And so it's causing those ugly shadows. So for us, there are many different ways you can fix this. One of the quickest ways you can fix this is by saying to Unreal Engine, hey, I want you to keep my Nanite meshes, right? And I want you to lower the level of detail as I move away from the camera. But when it comes to lighting them and looking at their shadows, I want you to use the original mesh. So we're still using Nanite. We're still using the performance save, but not as much because we want our shadows to still be realistic. So in order to do that, we have to introduce you to another function of Unreal Engine, which is called
Console variable, which is down there.
yes, the console commands, console variables. So it's basically a line of command. And Farah, you're familiar with commands, right?
Yes, basically you are just updating a value, a parameter in the engine. For example, in the entire engine, you want to update a value. You just update it over there and it reflects everywhere.
Absolutely. And the thing is, when you go to the content folder, sorry, not the content folder, when you go to the engine folder of every project, there's a notepad file, multiple notepad file that come with the default values that are set when you open up every Unreal Engine project. You can go ahead and change those default values using single lines of commands. And we've already have ours saved. But again, don't think that we know this number because we are geniuses. Every single time we've used the console command, it's been a Google search because we faced a problem. So when this happened, we searched and we found out that if we use this code right here, which I'm going to copy and we're going to leave it in the description box below, which is r.RayTracing.Nanite.Mode, space 1. So I'm going to paste it right here. 1 is the variable that we're trying to change, which is going to fix this. So I'll hit OK, see what happens. Boom, gone. We're using Nanite, so go to lit, check. Nanite is still on, but our shadows are fixed. Perfect. So if you want to know exactly what happened. You can go to the output log, which has basically all of the last things that have happened within the engine. And you can see at the very bottom, we've turned on the Nanite mode, the ray tracing Nanite mode. But I actually don't know what that does. Farhad, how can I figure out what each command does?
Instead of 1, put a question mark.
So when you've got a command, before changing it, you can go ahead and press question mark, hit enter, and then go to your output log. And then it's going to tell you what that command has done. Farhad, can you read that?
Fallback mesh default.
Yes. So it says, if you go to 0, it's going to use the fallback mesh. And by default, it says default, it was on 0. So it was using the fallback mesh for ray tracing. But if we go ahead and change this to 1, it's going to use the streamed out mesh, which is the mesh we have visible in our scene. So by changing it to 1, the ray tracing is now using this mesh, which then fixes our shadows. Now, that is just a tiny lesson about console commands. I'll just let you know, usually they start with the letter R. So if you go to R and then dot, and then you can put down whatever you're looking for, and then it will follow. So if the command is there, you're going to see it. If it's not there, it's probably just not going to show up. So you know you're putting down the wrong command. Now we'll cover commands later on during the rendering settings, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we can move on.
Wait, listen. Did you know that you can create highly photorealistic scenes with photogrammetry by taking in what exists in the real world into 3D?
We've been using Polycam to do exactly that, using our phone and drone.
Yes, that's right. And guess what? They sponsored this video to give you guys 30% off their pro plan. So you guys can go ahead and try it for yourself.
Use the code BADDECISIONS in the link in the description. Back to the course.
So Farhad, now that we fixed the shadows, what is next?
Let's populate our spaceship with an army of stormtroopers. Let's go.
I love that. So I can see now these characters are inside each other because I have the original ST selected. So I'm going to go ahead to ST Stormtroopers, turn this off, and then I'm going to select everything I have in the front army. And then all I have to do is
duplicate,
go to my global gizmo, Alt, drag, and then right click, mirror, right? Transform, mirror.
Was it Y?
Y.
Yes.
Boom. Just like that, we have now the front-facing army. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this block out now. And we've gotten ourselves the two sides of the army.
Let's go to the middle part.
I love that. So for the middle part, I'm going to go ahead and bring back our original stormtroopers, which are hidden right here. And I'm going to pull them out to the side because we want to create a different pattern, right? And in order to create a different pattern, I also want to switch up their original position so that they're not standing in the same order. So I'll pull this guy out to the right and then pull this guy here. And that's already a different position, right? Just a little bit of a difference. So Farhad, for this one, I think we should go for a full grid. What do you say?
Let's go.
Okay, so shift select all of them. Go ahead to modeling. You should already know how this works. At this point, it's not about technicalities anymore. It's about your design choice. So we're going to go and pull this guy back so that we're in this right position. And then I want to go ahead and make this 5. Nice. I think this is looking good.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Your jitter is on, so you bring it a little bit lower. Yes.
Nice. What do you say?
Yes,
I
perfect.
think this is perfect. Okay. Do you want to make him larger?
No. Why you want to make him larger? What do you mean larger?
Like longer a little bit? Like maybe 12? No.
No, the
10.
other one.
Maybe like 8 and then pull them?
No, they are... Oh, okay. No.
Maybe 6, 7, 6. Too many.
Too many.
5. I think this is good. What do you say?
Okay, yeah. It's fine.
Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, looks good.
Good. Hit accept. I can then go ahead and hide this, delete it. And then this pattern, all of these patterns, right? Everything. Select it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm going to call this middle army. Okay. And then select everything.
Duplicate, mirror Y, and we are done.
Mirror Y. And we are done. Cool. Now that we're done with this, we still have one last block to create, but I just want to leave this up to your own preference. So we're going to go fast forward this section and meet you when we're done with our army. And just like that, we are done with our army formation. Guys,
Look at that.
Seriously, look at how beautiful your spaceship looks. Please go ahead and use the hashtag we told you guys to share your results with us at the end of every episode. We cannot wait to see what you guys have created. Honestly, this is looking really sick, and I cannot wait to set up some cameras in there, Farhad.
I cannot wait. So guys, we are done with this chapter. Next chapter, we are going to talk about a topic which can help make your scene even more realistic. We are going to talk about decals. So see you guys in the next chapter.
Ciao.
Ciao.